So, for those of you that aren't familiar with this Vedic view of Shiva versus Shakti energies, it's the essential split between masculine and feminine, but also the unconscious versus conscious experiences. And even more deeply, Shiva is more seen as consciousness itself, but Shakti is this life force energy that's flowing through all things. So, in your individual experience, you could think of the Shakti energy as what's actually trying to conduct this integration. When a being starts to surrender, they feel the Shakti energy in them is attempting to mend all the inner splits. It's trying to bring in the balance. But you need to yield to the desires of that Shakti. And there's a lot of different shades to it. I'm not an expert. I'm going to tell you right off the bat of all the Vedic nuances here. But Shakti is distributed in a few main currents. For example, desire and will and action. And there's also a whole range of feminine expressions like the womb space and the mother energy. And Shakti flows into all these seasons and basically gradients of how emotions will seek completion through the being. So when you're feeling the Shakti energy inside you, it's like a river that's guiding you downstream to follow the course of consciousness. It's trying to show you deeper truths. It's trying to connect you with parts of you that have been hidden or stored, things that you've been fearing, elements you've been hiding from yourself and others. So the most important element that I personally apply is feeling that Shakti is always elemental. So when you're guiding yourself into deeper balance, there's always going to be something that you sense is polarized in one or the other direction. And the Shakti energy knows how to restore that harmony. So for instance, if you're feeling a lot of angry energy, energy that might connect to the liver and can store trauma from the past or things that currently feel triggering the now moment, the inner Shakti might guide you to release that anger through a creative kind of yin energy expression, which will feel like the water that cools you down and brings you into the spirit of release and creative expression. And if you yield to that, you're going to find yourself not battling whatever feels stagnant, resistant, or too much, where you've maybe overcompensated in the past by storing this congested energy inside you. And instead, the Shakti is going to guide you into the antidote naturally, where literally you become the medicine because you allow yourself to hold the equal and opposite charge. It could be anything that brings you balance in that moment, even a combination of elements. And that's how I personally approach it. And I feel is really beautiful to look at yourself as a being that's meant to harmonize all the elements and feel the conjunction of the fire, the water, the earth, the air, and even the ether. And all these elements live throughout the energy body, of course, through the chakra system. And they require you to always stay open to life and to communion with the elements all around you, but also open to the exchange of energies within yourself. And that's where that triggering is really happening for a lot of people right now. If any person is used to being constantly in the outflow state, so they're pouring through the physical facade, the things that they want to have be seen by others, and the way that they're being perceived is what matters most to them, then something's being compromised emotionally through that inner Shakti experience. And that's going to start to bring up this feeling of disturbance. So even if someone doesn't acknowledge it on the surface, they're going to feel like something is missing. Or maybe they're feeling drained because they aren't allowing the circulation of the Shakti energy through them in the way that will naturally make them feel harmonized. And so right now, I want all of you to sense that inside yourselves. If you're a map of all of these elemental expressions, what right now is lacking in you? If there is some really fiery emotions, why is the water element something you're not attending to? And now, how can you start to implement the energy of what is missing? If you're feeling right now you're pulled to a very etheric expression, maybe the spiritual highs are what you're seeking, ironically, what you're not seeing then is that the groundedness is what your spirit really wants you to experience. To take that energy, take the knowing, and even the inclination to be transcendent, and now be rooted in that knowing and desire. That's what allows the Shakti to move from a sheer place of, let's say, desire, an intention, or a place of knowledge to action and proactive expression of the energy. So the Shakti itself is not just a feminine element. That's a super key aspect. The Shakti is always going to feel like an imbalanced part of you if it's just reserved for yourself or if you are actually discriminating against the different parts of it. It wants to flow in a way that's uninterrupted, for you to actually feel into. There's this spirit of life essentially inside you that has its own way, and it wants to experience freedom through you. And if you yield to it, you will experience love and joy and well-being. And actually, any emotional or physical issues can be relayed to something in the Shakti that has been blocked off or interrupted. Think about it. It's uncanny how something like what we're talking about can actually resonate with so many people. Like, I posted those last 2 videos about surrender, and I'm getting hundreds of messages that this is exactly what I'm going through. And I'm putting words to things that people can't even explain. So how is that possible, right? There's a kind of non-local field phenomena of people feeling an energy, which is inspiring them to go through this nervous system reboot. And that opens up in them the knowing of everything that created tension and density and pressure in the past. As they're feeling it and allowing that feeling to be understood, they start to bring in this energy of compassion that opens them up even more, so they can receive new energy, new information, knowing from their own higher self, and at the same time crystallize in a physical identity, which supports true knowing and embodiment. We can't just, escape our bodies, because that leads to a whole other myriad of issues. You're just going to be ungrounded. Again, if you look from the perspective of Shakti energy, it's not even going to be able to flow. A lot of people, they're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the matrix environment because they're trying to reject what is, including themselves, due to the pain of it. So we need to see that, feel that pain, let ourselves even come closer to what's uncomfortable, and then ultimately feel. The comfort comes from there, from the conscious decision to come closer to what created resistance in the past. And then you're going to feel guided by something higher than you, and at the same time rooted to the very real reality at hand. I know that's paradoxical because it's both happening at once, but that's our superpower, guys. We can do it. You're literally the alchemist if you seek that transmutation inside yourself. And what better archetype for that than Kali, right? It's literally built into this concept of Kali Yuga as the age where all of what's been hidden, suppressed, exploited, all of the trauma beneath the surface starts to surface. But it happens in a way that's really disfiguring to the ego and to the mind, because this happens to the feminine archetype. So first of all, let's talk about the Kali energy. And I'm curious if you guys can feel it also as a way of interacting with the field in its mirroring capacity. Because Kali is obviously a very aggressive, cutting, kind of surgical archetype. It takes out only what's extra and that doesn't get seen by the conscious mind. It goes straight to the point, and it casts light on all of the shadows and all the places that you might want to ignore if you choose to stay in the illusion, in the ignorance is bliss kind of mentality. And that's obviously what creates the state of disillusionment, any kind of delusions that fuel reality, and also everything above the surface that looks corrupt, greedy, sort of sinful in its nature. Namely, the fall of Babylon and the exposure of all of these dark themes that humanity is harboring is literally what causes this massive transfiguration that's illustrated in the book of Revelation. Of course, it's talked about as a physical experience, what's happening above the surface with empires needing to fall because they weren't aligned with these higher level truths. But let's also look at God and the Kali energy as somewhat interchangeable, because what the Kali reveals is everything that needs to be integrated for there to be wholeness, illuminated. So this is down to the individual level, the systemic level, the metasystemic level, on all levels of reality. Whatever has been stored as an illusion eventually has to get revealed. And Kali is literally that revelatory archetype. So the question I would ask each of you to think about in this context is, what is your relationship with that archetype that holds space for revelation, for illumination? Is it triggering to be looking into a mirror where all of the distortions, the shadow parts, the blind spots end up being seen? Or is that something that you can more or less be comfortable or even curious about looking into to really sense how integrated are you on the soul level? How curious are you about figuring out everything that you don't know? If it's something that bites, that creates this sense of internal resistance and contraction, then it's likely because you are relating to Kali in that way. You're afraid of the energy that dark feminine will reveal in you. And it isn't an aggressive archetype in the way that it can actually enact harm. The only thing that it's revealing is where you essentially have been harming yourself, or where a system as a whole has been perpetuating harm as that state of disease, a lack of coherence. And that brings us to the nature of splits. So that's really the core theme that I feel the group is asking about. I feel like all of you have been really diving deep to figure out, what are you still split from? Or what are you experiencing as a split part of yourself that's raising more questions now? And whatever you're curious about, transmuting is likely pointing to where you sense those splits are. And that's something really powerful. So I'm really proud of everyone that's feeling that and that's choosing to venture into their split nature, because that means you're literally choosing to hold hands with that inner Kali. It's the part that will actually do the revealing if you are approaching it with love and with the knowing that this archetype is extremely powerful. It's going to shed light on everything that has been harbored inside you that's keeping you feeling confused and trapped and limited or wounded. And so that's step one, gaining a positive relationship with this Kali energy, because it's also the cosmic energy at hand. Everything right now that's being revealed systemically, and that's creating a lot of friction and kind of this discomfort around, like, we've been lied to, and so much else that we feel has been hidden from us on a collective consciousness level. What's revealing that is also that Kali energy. And it's also built into the universal mechanism of restoration, how everything is cyclical and how over time things get spiraled into clarity, whether we like it or not. It's just because truth has that way of coming out ultimately. And so Kali is just a way of framing that as that part of the feminine energy that breaks through what the mind has been trying to trap or limit the awareness of, but eventually that comes through the feeling state. Firstly, holding that concept of how you relate to the Kali energy, whether you are comfortable with the energy of revelation and things coming to the surface that have been suppressed or repressed inside you, to now feeling into what splits are you holding that energy is going to reveal, which is basically when you get super honest with yourself and look at everything that's been creating discomfort or a sense of disease across the physical, emotional, mental, and ultimately spiritual levels. What are you harboring that when you really look deeply inside yourself, you know is somewhere that you're maybe splitting yourself on your own truth. Maybe you're splitting yourself in relationships. You're splitting yourself because you've outgrown certain things, including attachments, roles, responsibilities, whatever the case may be. But you're continuing to keep up that split because you think that's the only way your identity can support your reality. But then reality is also going to be revealing to you the splits within yourself. So this relationship always ends up being mirrored. So you could see that in a way, Kali is all around you. It's what's wrapping you in the awareness of, if you feel whole, connected to yourself, deeply intimate with your inner reality, the world around you isn't going to feel as confusing to navigate because you already know intimately what you're holding inside yourself that's creating that energetic template. But if it feels like there's a lot of splits that are coming to light in the world around you, where's that rubbing against internal splits? And this could literally be in terms of your inner philosophy, your beliefs, what you like, what you don't, how you split in your preferences, your intentions, your relationship choices, and the way that you ultimately relate to yourself. If there are splits, immediately some things are going to come to your mind as truths that you're choosing to not fully integrate about what you more deeply deserve, what you more deeply want to feel and have as a pervasive part of your life. But if there's a split there, the split is going to be connected to a part of you that once was at that crossroads. That's literally where the split in timelines lives. It's that deep. It's where you go from that essential wholeness, the inner essence, to then feeling like you need to split from just being that way because certain circumstances or people rubbed against your ability to be whole. And maybe you were judged for being that way. Maybe your energy felt too big, too kind of too mandated in its desire to, bring truths out, as every child has that desire to really explore big questions, to go deeper, to choose lovingly what it's aligned with. And when that's too much for other people to handle, you can harbor a really subconscious shame around just being that way. And that will lead to a split, which causes you to disidentify from the core tendency. So try to track on the timeline of your life. Where did those crossroads happen? What were the most traumatic instances where you felt that you needed to split from that knowing, that core truth, that somatic awareness of who you are at the deepest level, and move into kind of a split avatar where you developed a mask, a strategy, a role play, something that you've started to cope with to just not be with that inherent truth of who you are. And now when you analyze that on a mass level, it's almost like a tree with all these offshoots and branches, which can take you so far away from that core truth that you're living as an extension of who you really are. And that can lead to a lot of numbness, to emotional avoidance, to a lack of presence. And then the way that that enters the sphere of relationships is most obvious, that then people can't feel the real you because you're not even connected to that core truth of who you are. Even though it might seem that obviously in a relationship, you want people to feel and be intimate with you at the soul level, there's that paradox of, well, do you really want that? Do you really welcome them that deeply? Or are you actually afraid of being that open, that vulnerable, because of all these micro splits that have been accumulating? And there's often a really deep paradox lodged in the subconscious when it comes to that. You might think that, of course, I want these things. Like everybody on the basic level, they want that safety, protection, comfort, abundance, joy, all the good stuff. But then what the subconscious is harboring is where that dark energy has accumulated to potentially degrade you, devalue you, make you feel like you need to shut down. Maybe you require less than what you actually deserve because you're stuck in a freeze state or you're in compression and you're feeling this emotional bondage because of people that didn't treat you right or circumstances that felt they didn't honor you at the soul level. But of course, in the grand scheme of things, those splits are showing you exactly the path to fulfilling yourself. And that's what the Kali energy is ultimately teaching, not to stay reactive or to stay stuck on feeling like, oh, now I'm split and now my life is going to have to feel like I'm constantly navigating these splits because I'm aware of them. But ultimately, you really come to terms with the splits are something to befriend. There's something to bring your awareness towards, and that's really the nature of feminine energy. It's a super strong field of presence, and it's why a lot of people, I feel, are terrified of it, because you have to be present with awareness as it is. No more shortcuts, no more lies, no more shying away from the full truth of what you're feeling and what's going on around you. And that includes seeing through what you've been told, what you've been taught, what games your mind might be playing with you, and really going deeper, like summoning the deeper essence of what you're holding and what's happening beneath the surface. And that's often the only way to also heal from those deep traumas, because the reality on the surface is also not what it appears. You have to kind of analyze, where did people come from that inflicted pain? What's the deeper programming there? And you can become super adept at seeing Kali energy is ruling the world unconsciously. Just like people that are creating so much of the trauma, they're replaying pain because they're refusing to integrate with their own Kali. And so then it might look like there's just these destroyer archetypes left and right, people trying to wage war and create conflict and resistance. But they're also secretly afraid of going into that state. And so they polarize from it. And that's why they end up inflicting all this suffering and harm onto others. So that's another paradox wrapped into the nature of Kali. It's going to continue to destroy and seemingly create conflicts and splits, but it's only doing that to shine light on the deeper truth. And when that's accepted, then you don't have to be afraid of Kali or polarity. You just see it for what it is. It's revealing what has been split from initially so that people come back to their set point and they feel and they melt the resistance and they realize there was nothing to run away from or to escape, because it's always going to be mirrored right back to you until you finally come to terms with that. It's almost like we create a path that's as difficult and complex or as easy as we want it to be, depending on how open we are to experiencing these disruptive yet revelatory energies inside ourselves. And that's a super healing thing to wake up in you, to invite that archetype to help you and support you, and see how that's just a very powerful part of God that's trying to show you the way back to truth and to your state of being, where there's no more illusions that can be held, just a kind of cohesive coming back to oneness and the reality of your heart. Prepare to feel like people respond to you completely differently based on that kind of coherence. And that's why everything feels backwards. When you realize that, you start to see how when people get triggered, it's because you're actually carrying this beacon of truth. You're shining true light, and it triggers their darkness, which is where discernment really lives. It's in the body, which is the feminine part of the conscious experience. Even if your mind wants to believe something, like to go along with a certain mass perspective, or even to be comforted by some illusion, your body will know that something is off because you'll feel that somewhere there's still tension, or maybe even a belief that feels comforting at the level of the psyche. It prevents you from experiencing deeper comfort in your soma. And you'll know that because the nervous system is still tense. And you'll feel something has to be backwards in my reality because I don't feel like there's total alignment between my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual experiences. So that's how you really know. If something is backwards, something will keep agitating you. And it'll be like a subconscious search for meaning to try to figure out, how do I bring things back into that higher order alignment? But that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to really start to be that agent of reorganization, which is that deep dive that a lot of people are now navigating. Is there something that you felt, especially in the last month or so, come up that's felt super intense, but that has felt triggering to fully give yourself to merge with that feeling? It could be grief. It could be an intense fear. It could be the sense that you need to detach from something to establish that higher order alignment, but you feel afraid of letting go. Anything that's creating that kind of deep duality, and it's bringing up parts of you that seemingly want different things, but there's a deeper emotion which is holding you tethered to that split. And so my suggestion would be to go into that emotion that feels like it's going to consume you and change you. Because if you do, the backwards principle plays in, and what will happen is you actually achieve a transcendent state. This is also the nature of heart consciousness, is it creates the deepest trigger. When you're in the state of non-duality, which is basically you first were in duality, you merged with a higher level awareness outside of it, is now you become that trigger, you become that mirror. And because of that, you start to feel this stretching of the heart field, which allows you to hold all the duality, but to not fight it anymore. It's like that feeling of you breathing into all of the splits or fragments in your field, but then ultimately feeling they all merge into this kind of property of oneness that allows you to feel everything and not to feel threatened by it. And it's extremely intense. It's like the state of, imagine going deep into the most traumatizing thing that either you've ever experienced or a collective trauma, and feeling tremendous grief or pain. And at the same time, once you go into that state, you're able to size up an opportunity to achieve liberation. And then you're flooded with joy, or with a feeling of understanding and wisdom that gives you that key to freedom. But it can seem like, to the mind, this doesn't make any sense at all. How you can feel grief and joy in the same breath. How can you feel these things which seem like opposite ends of the scale as part of one continuum? That's the collective challenge right now. And it's such a deep personal challenge because all of us seem to have some kind of limits to our ability to feel or our desire to go this deep. But really, if you challenge yourself to go to this point of no longer creating separation between your emotional depths and how you express them, you're going to feel like something new in you opens up. And it's a kind of strength and a courage to be willing to merge with that feminine part of your being, which is essentially what your soul wants you to be experiencing. And if you can hold that, then the fears and these kind of more surface level emanations of doubt, uncertainty, feelings of chaos, they also disintegrate because you become invincible if you can go that deep into your awareness and really hold such a paradox. If you give yourself this gift of really seeing yourself in the sense of allowing for the evolutionary jump, it'll be a turning point. You won't be able to see yourself as even having the option of allowing blind spots to sabotage your life path. See how even that becomes a contradiction if you allow yourself to be this more intelligent observer consistently. You simply can't go back anymore. And so you're going to feel this profound accountability emerge, where every action, every day is an opportunity to just go deeper. And also there's a mantra I would add, which is helpful for anyone that wants to install this more deeply into their subconscious. Simply, every day, in every way, I'm getting better, better, and better. Because once you implant this coding that you're looking for the opportunity to keep expanding and fortifying your field for the better in every way, everything starts to improve. And you're looking for this opportunity to create that expansion, thereby granting permission for the soul to communicate with more openness and clarity through you. And at that point, just let yourself receive. Feel like this energy pooling inside you wants to grant you even more opportunities to show up better, to be a better human, to give more love, to feel more self-compassion, and to sense that that unity within you wants to create more unity in your life. The more people that wake up and that choose to assume responsibility for this powerful shift that is already occurring, there's going to have to be more of a systemic change. Because as this awakening unfolds, more and more people are taking a stand and choosing to devote themselves to the solutions and the common experiences that benefit all of humanity. Ultimately, next year is going to unfold in a remarkable way if you're choosing to allow yourself to relate to transformation in the best way possible. Meaning you can even allow yourself to have a cathartic moment in a beautiful way by understanding that that is your soul inviting you into a reality in which you can drop all of the masks, disguises, and all the aspects of yourself that have already reached their expiration date. You can give up all of the false means of existing within reality by no longer conforming to a matrix that's already experiencing transformation. There will be more polarization on both ends of the spectrum, but most importantly, you now no longer need to be so polarized within yourself. As soon as you choose to diminish this polarization energy, and you allow yourself to contact divine neutrality by way of simply confiding in the messages that you're already feeling deep down, and whatever splits as the invitation to bring yourself into deeper harmony, you can allow yourself to be free and to even undergo all collective change in a way of trusting that when you act upon the need for change as soon as possible, it's going to bring you in the right direction. As soon as you feel the need for change and you resist it, you are inevitably going to experience more opposition and resistance because of that. You aren't being punished by this collective shift. We are all simply vessels as part of a collective family, moving planet Earth, which is an organism that is expanding because of all of us, into a state of deeper alignment. And this realignment is a must. It is the non-negotiable part because we're already experiencing such density, which must be transmuted. And so you can be the light at the end of the darkness. And if you currently are feeling like there is no light at the end of the tunnel for you, then know that you need to become that light that you are seeking. You must allow yourself to receive the energy, receive the intention, actually desire to take yourself out of that darkness. And all of a sudden, you're going to feel like you are the quantum architect of that experience. As soon as you set that intention to excavate whatever experience you are seeking, you will realize that there is no lag time between that potent intention and the manifestation of the objective you are really seeking. But the most important part is actualizing that you have been creating it all along. You are creating that darkness, and you likewise are the antidote. You are that light and that freedom and that truth. Because as soon as you realize that you are the only intermediary in this experience, you create that point of self-actualization. And so here's to a year of more beautiful self-actualization. I hope that you choose for yourself to come into the deepest alignment that you can, to be free, to be that breath of fresh air for yourself, and to not seek comfort and distractions and materialism as the solution for any of the pain, loneliness, or frustration that you might have been feeling, but to realize that it's now your time to really confront all of that resistance, everything stored within your shadow, all of the repression, suppression, and pain, and realize that now is the time to let go of all of that by choosing what is really illuminated on the other side. Be the illumination, and you will experience all of the light reflection that you are seeking.